have Emily Block joining us. She is a physician's assistant in New York City, originally from Panora, Iowa. Actually used to live next door to me. Her family still does. So yeah, she lives in New York City. She graduated from St. Ambrose College with her degree in master's in physician assistant, right? Or
Yep.
Studies maybe?
Yep.
Okay. She is also a blogger and a wedding photographer in times when things are not so socially distant. So thanks, Emily, for joining today. It's good to see
of course.
you. If you could
Good to be here.
All right. Well, if you could maybe start with a little bit of a backstory. I'm sorry, I gave a little bit away there as far as where you're from and everything, but maybe a little bit of your backstory and what got you involved in the healthcare field and kind of what led you down the career path that you're in today.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm from Panora, Iowa. I graduated high school there in 2012, went to college and majored in biology, not really knowing what part of the healthcare field I wanted to go into, but kind of having an idea that I wanted to go into healthcare. So I did a couple of internships in college, which were great experiences, and kind of got a sampler platter, if you will, of like all of the different healthcare professions. And I figured out that physician assistant would be the best fit for me and the lifestyle that I wanted. So I ended up taking a year off after college to get some patient care experience, which a lot of PA schools require, just that you have some experience working with patients in some capacity. And then I went through the long, arduous process of applying through PA schools and going on interviews, and eventually got accepted at St. Ambrose. So I matriculated there in 2017, I believe. And it was a 29-month program. I just graduated this December of 2019, and then I started my job in May of 2020.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. So you moved from Panora, Iowa to New York City in May of 2020. So
it's like the same thing. Yeah, not that much of a difference.
Not a global pandemic or anything.
No.
And I think, you know, at the very start of it in March, New York City was a major hotspot for the virus. So what were your feelings then? Like, what was going through your head as you were getting on an airplane? And not only that, going into the healthcare field too.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I was nervous that I wouldn't have a job, because I know that a lot of companies at that point were going on hiring freezes, and a lot of people that I graduated with were having a lot of difficulty finding positions. But everything did work out because they had already had like the funding for my position and stuff through NYU. And so it just took them a little bit longer to process my paperwork than it normally would have, because they were doing so much emergency credentialing for people that were actually working on the front lines. In my specialty, we didn't see it as much just because I work in intensive care for neonates. So it's babies that have never gone home and left the hospital. They don't have the chance to become exposed to the virus and everything like that. So the most that I had to deal with it was just going to like deliveries where moms were COVID positive. But luckily, knock on wood, my unit hasn't really seen a ton of COVID. I do know that exists in other parts of the hospital, and we hear from like the respiratory team and stuff, like their anecdotes and stories about how scary it is, which was kind of intimidating at first, but we always had like proper equipment and everything, so I never felt at risk in that sense. Honestly, I felt more at risk if I was like standing in line to go get groceries or something, but been healthy so far, so grateful for that.
Good.
But yeah, it was a little bit nerve-wracking coming out here in the middle of all of it, just because there was so much unknown and we didn't know how long everything was going to last. And at that point, I don't even think anyone really knew how it was spreading. But New York kind of figured it out. April and May, they kind of noticed that when everyone started wearing the masks, and they shut down, in-person contact with schools and workplaces that were non-essential, the numbers really started going down. So I think the spread here is at less than like 0.8 per day or something. So it's definitely decreasing. Now that our rates are so low, we just don't let anyone else in.
Yeah, That makes sense. That's smart, right?
Yeah.
So, especially not us, right?
It's
Iowa.
annoying, but I guess I can understand why they're doing it.
Yes. Yep. So what made you decide to get into neonatal intensive care?
So when I took my gap year between PA school and undergrad, I landed in a NICU just by chance. I was applying to a bunch of patient care tech jobs at the University of Iowa, just to get some more healthcare experience in a hospital setting. And the NICU was one of the places that had openings. So I applied and I started training there. And I really liked the NICU, and I liked, everyone that I worked with. So I was a little biased in that sense, but I still wasn't sure that it was what I wanted to do, like as a career. And then I went to PA school, and during PA school, you do rotations in a ton of different specialties, from like family medicine to surgery to inpatient medicine in the hospital. And one of my electives actually ended up being NICU. So that was the one that I enjoyed the most. And I decided to just like, kind of see what was out there in terms of NICU jobs for PAs, because in the Midwest, I had noticed it was mostly nurse practitioners and like specialized nurse practitioners that get their certification in neonatology. And as a PA, we're just generalists. So we just work under the physician, and we have the scope of practice of the physician that we work under. So I was just kind of browsing, and I applied into probably like 10 or 15 jobs from like Pennsylvania to New York to North Dakota. And I wasn't really expecting to get anything, to be honest, because most of them require you to have some sort of ICU experience since it's so specialized. But I guess NYU was willing to train a new provider. So I hopped on a plane and came out here for an interview. And I really enjoyed the team, and they seemed like a good group to work with. So I was just keeping my fingers crossed, came out for the interview, and eventually ended up getting hired somehow. So here I am.
Yes. So if you had to pick like one thing in the last 4 months that stands out as like a very rewarding thing in your career, in your current profession, what, like, can you think of one or two things that kind of stand out as kind of the highlight reel so far?
I really enjoy going to deliveries when they get called to deliveries to like help resuscitate a baby, whether it's a baby that we know we're going to admit, or just kind of like something that has happened as the normal delivery progressed that they want NICU backup. And just kind of getting to help introduce babies into the world is very rewarding. Like from a personal standpoint, I always feel really good about myself when I have successful procedures. So it's a little bit more selfish, but
Yeah.
sometimes I pat myself on the back, like, hey, yeah, I got that, like arterial line or whatever.
Nothing big, nothing big.
Yeah, the small things.
How is the stress level with that? Because it sounds like, I mean, you probably are dealing with emergency situations sometimes too, right?
Yeah, and you never know what you're gonna get when you walk in for a shift, especially in the NICU, because like last night I went in and I had a great night, and we, like all the providers, we ate supper together while we did our like worksheets, and then went out to do our rounds and stuff, and didn't get called for any deliveries throughout our call shift, so it was a pretty like chill night. But then I've had nights where I go in and we have to take kids for procedures, and we have deliveries on the board that we're waiting for, and then we're doing procedures to admit those deliveries, and you don't get any sleep at all. So it just really depends. But that's kind of what I like about it. It's like keeps it exciting.
Yeah. So how long are your shifts then? Are they 12?
They're 12 hours.
Okay. Okay.
Right now I can do 24-hour shifts starting in November. So after 6 months working there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So hopefully you get some sleep during those.
Yeah. So like our call shifts, on a good night, we can get like 3 to 4 hours, just depending on what's going on in the unit. But we all have to be there because there's circumstances where two patients will deliver at the same time, and we're having 2 admissions, and that would just be too much for 2 people. So
Yes, I can see that. So
yeah, hopefully never 3 at a time.
right.
Hasn't happened to me yet, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. That it's not something you can just put the brakes on real
Yep.
easily.
Like, oh, we can't really stop it. So
Okay, so what is one major risk that you've had to take to get where you're at now?
I think there's been like a lot of calculated risk throughout the process of like going to PA school. You go to undergrad and you go for this 4-year degree with the idea of going to grad school, but you don't even know if you'll be admitted into grad school. So you could have this 4-year degree that's really useless. Which in hindsight, I wish I would have done something other than biology just so I could have like a broader skill set and then just taking the prerequisites that were required for PA schools. But it worked out for me, so I can't complain. And then like going to PA school is another risk in itself because you're paying all this tuition money, and you at the end of the day, if you don't pass your boards, you can't work as a PA. So you go to school for 2.5 years, and then hopefully you pass the one test at the end that allows you to practice. Which again, I passed, so it worked out for me. And then just like in terms of big risks, I took a risk coming out here, obviously, in the middle of a pandemic, both with like not really knowing if my job was going to start in time financially, and with my health, like I didn't know what was going to happen with coronavirus and how contagious it was going to be. So I've been lucky so far, and hopefully it's part of skill and a little bit of luck, but I guess if you don't take risks, you're never gonna get very far.
Right. So when you were explaining all those risks, like through college and applying for PA school, what was your thought process for that? Did you have a backup plan, or were you just focusing on the goal and like at this point there is no other option, this is the way I'm going? Or were you like, well, I could always do this?
Yeah. So in our senior seminar, they'd like make you have a backup plan and like do all the steps that is required to prepare for that. So mine was actually going to get a master's in nutrition, and I applied to like Colorado State University and I actually got accepted to that program. But at that point, I had just decided that I wanted to pursue the PA thing. So I just worked as a nursing assistant and hoping that I would get admitted the next cycle. And I guess if I didn't, I probably just would have tried again the next year and then probably reevaluated after that. But works out, I guess.
Yeah. So it sounds like for your school, you kind of have to have some sort of idea for a backup plan, but it sounds like
Yeah.
your heart was just kind of in the PA
Yeah.
world. So, okay. So switching gears a little bit, what is something like unexpected, like as far as a hobby or a passion that you have?
Well, I have a YouTube channel, which like always throws people off because they're like, "Oh, is it about like being a PA?" And I'm like, "Nope, it's about like just being creative." And so they're like, "Oh, that's so interesting," because usually people that work in science have like, I don't know if it's even the right side or the left side, but you have the one track brain that's like analytical, and you have the people that are creative, but you don't meet a ton of people that have both. So
Yeah. So what's your latest post on your YouTube channel?
I think my latest one was like I went thrifting in the Upper East Side, and I just did like a little tour of like the thrift stores in Upper East Side and like showed what I got. So it's a very like chill 10-minute video. I've done some videos on like my apartment and just moving to New York City. So those ones do a little bit better.
Yeah, I feel like your editing, so like I was telling you earlier, but this is like about the 10th one of these that I've done, and they're pretty, when I edit, it's pretty clunky. It's nothing too but I loved your videos like when you first moved to New York City, and I mean, they're like professional quality.
Thank you.
Conditions and everything, and so yeah, they're really good. Maybe if you're looking for a part-time job when you're not working a 24-hour shift, you can do some editing for me.
Yeah. Well, that's just been like trial and error too. Like I took one video production class in high school, but I actually started making some YouTube videos on my gap year between undergrad and PA school. And I used iMovie, which is like Apple's basic like plan, and just couldn't do as much as I wanted. So I ended up buying the professional version. But I just would YouTube like, how do you get this effect? And then watch the video and then try to like do it. And over time, you like develop skills and you develop your style. So
Right. Well, and so you've done some wedding videography as well,
yeah.
right? So is that the same kind of software for that?
Yep, I use the same software for both.
Okay. Okay. And photography too, right? I mean, not the software is different, but you do wedding photography as well, right? Or
Yeah, I have done a couple of weddings. I try not to like get too far into that part because, you know, that could be a little more risky.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to also, I knew there was something else I wanted to touch on. I also wanted to touch on the artistic side of things because I think you also had like an Etsy shop, or you have in the past. Like I know I've
Yeah.
had you make some different things for me.
Yes.
Like herb markers for my garden, and jewelry. You've done a ton of jewelry too. I feel like you've done a ton of creative things, almost like, do you feel like you need to have a creative outlet of some sort?
I do, because I get bored very easily. And I think that if I just worked all of the time, would, I just get into the workaholic mode like so easily. Like I've worked 60 hours this week, which is great for my paycheck. But then, you know, when I finally have a day off, I'm like, oh, that was kind of a lot. So it is good to have like a little break and kind of work other parts of my brain. But yeah, I've tried, I mean, and I still do. I still do like make jewelry and do painting and stuff like that. I'm always looking for a way to monetize things. So I'm like, hey, if I can have fun doing this and make money off of it, that would be the best.
Yes.
So I think we just ended up buying so much supplies for like the different things I wanted to try. I'm like, well, we have like so much left over. I might as well just try to sell it.
Okay.
And yeah, like I sold a couple. I had a pretty good summer with my Etsy shop one year, but it just became like too much work, like being the shipment and fulfillment and like making everything. And I'm like, I'm going to college. Like this is a full-time job.
Well, and haven't you like sold your clothes on like is it ThreadUp or some other?
Yeah. So on Poshmark, actually, when I wasn't working, I would like go to thrift stores and like find things that were undervalued. Like you could find shirts at Goodwill with tags and for like $4. And so I would just buy those and like flip them and sell them to someone like on an app for like a little bit more than I paid for them. I never like made a crazy amount of money doing that, but it
Yeah.
was nice because no one tells you when you finish PA school that it's going to take 6 months to be credentialed to start working and like start making money. So I was like grasping at straws during that time, just trying to find a way to not have to like completely live off of my parents,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
they're probably like, you still lived off of us, but
Well, during that time, you're still having to do some sort of work stuff, but you're just not getting
right,
paid for it, right? So it's not like you have a
right,
ton of free time. It just means that you're not making money, right?
right, exactly. And studying for boards and everything like that. So, and you know, certifications, like starting out as a PA, our drug certification costs around $750. Our board certification, I think, costs around $500. So there's a lot of upfront costs that people aren't very upfront about, just in like the post-grad period. So I would love to see that talked about more, but it just like is something that we were kind of underprepared for.
Okay.
And talking to like some of my colleagues, it was the same for them.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're going back to like when you were talking about like you know, like the Etsy shop and the jewelry and that kind of stuff, I feel like you have always had like this entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
You craft what you want kind of out of life, I feel like. So you're like, if there's something that you really want to do, like you'll find a way to like make that work. And
Yeah.
I feel like you don't put any limits on yourself as far as like, no, that doesn't make sense, or you know, that's not that's not what people would expect. You like, it's
Right.
whatever you want, and you kind of just go for it. So I admire
Yeah.
that.
Thank you. And a lot of it.
Mom, I love hearing from your mom all of the new ideas that you're working on and all the new things that you're doing.
She's probably like, I wish one of them would just stick, but hey, I've been pretty consistent with YouTube for a while now, so hopefully I can keep that up and maybe monetize that in the future. But we'll see. It's just a fun hobby for now, so it's not like I'm looking to make too much off of it. And I like having it as a creative outlet too, just because it's something I don't have to like feel forced to do. And like having the stable income from, you know, the science aspect of like my training, and still being able to create in my free time without feeling pressured to like put out product.
Right.
and content. So
And think like in 10 years, how cool that's going to be to look back and have that
yeah.
archive of like the time you moved to New York City.
Hmm.
That's going to
Be
be
like,
cool.
hey, my kids, like, hey, I moved in the middle of the pandemic. Like, this is what coronavirus is like. Everyone wore a mask everywhere, and we had to wait 3 hours in line at Trader Joe's.
Yep. Get everyone some popcorn and sit down for. So I know it's really probably weird in New York right now, but what has been like one of your favorite things to do since you've moved there? Obviously, it's very limited as to what you can do,
Yeah.
but
I really like going to Central Park and just like walking around. I had no idea Central Park was like so big and there's so much to do there. There's like, I mean, not right now as much, but you can do like paddle boats and stuff. And yesterday I went with a friend up to like what's called the Ravine, and it feels like you're on a hike in the middle of New York City. So that's probably my favorite place to go and just like kind of forget that I'm in the city for a little bit. And then like I love going to Soho and going shopping because they have the best shopping there. So
okay. Are the
probably
are
not a
shops
sustainable
open?
activity, but
So are the shops open? Like, do you have
yeah, they are now. They
limited?
opened beginning of July.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So a little bit of normalcy then, like.
Yeah. You still have to wear a mask and everything, but it is nice to like I was just saying I would go in a store and be like, oh, it's so nice to like see this piece of furniture in person because you look online for so long. I'm like, I have no idea like the quality of this. So once they opened, I finally went in and I was like, okay, I need to order some furniture, like not be sleeping on an air mattress anymore. Uh, but
Okay, so
yeah,
talk about the logistics of moving from Iowa, and you could take 1, 2 suitcases to move, like to move
yeah.
to New York City, right? So you
So
just
I,
had a suitcase on your back, or
yeah. So I took two suitcases. And one of them I took like an air mattress and like bedding and stuff, and the other suitcase I took like clothes. Um, and I sublet actually for my first couple of months here, which a lot of people recommend if you're moving to the city without like any connections, just so you can like apartment hunt in person. So that was my plan initially, but then once I got here, they weren't showing apartments in person, so everything became virtual anyway.
right,
But I did end up subleasing for a couple months, and then so I was able to like use her like silverware and dinnerware and cook stuff. And then once I finally got my own apartment, I actually came back home that weekend and got just like the basic necessities to be able to like cook. And I still was sleeping on an air mattress for probably like 4 months until it got a hole in it and I finally had to cave and buy a bed.
so next time you move, it's not going to be as easy.
Yeah, no, this was too easy. But well, and if I ever want to leave New York, I have really no attachment to material things, so it's easy for me to be like, oh, I'll just like sell that or donate it. Um, like I don't really have attachment to material things. I just like to um, have the experiences.
Right. Okay. Is that bothering you not traveling? Because I know you're a big
It
traveler.
really is. Yeah. And I've been looking up, there's actually a lot to do in New York State. Like upstate, there's tons of great hiking, and in the winter, there's skiing and stuff, which I'm looking forward to. So I'm trying to recruit friends to like go on hikes with me and, do little day trips from the city because it's pretty connected out here by train.
Right.
You can get to Boston in a couple of hours. You can get to DC in a few hours. So I think most of New England I'm allowed to travel to right now. So I'm looking at doing like a little getaway in a couple of weeks, but we'll see if the travel is still allowed. One of my friends recommended Cape Cod, so I'm
Okay.
looking into that.
Okay. By train then, or
I would probably fly there just because
okay. Yeah.
it's a little bit quicker.
Gotcha. Okay. So who would be one person that inspires you?
Oh goodness. It's different for different aspects of my life. Like value wise, I would say my parents, because they just like instill really good values in me, and I can notice that now, especially that I'm in New York, and like kind of compare and contrast like different people's upbringings. Like career wise, there's a couple people at work that I just really look up to that are so passionate about their job, and you can just tell like in everything they do, They're so good at it, and it's because they have like the true love of it, not just, going there to punch in and punch out. So I wouldn't say there's one specific person. I would just say, like, in different aspects of my life, there's people that I draw from.
Love it. So you're like a combination of all of the values of the people that you have interacted with and that have made a difference in your life, right?
Yeah. Well, and they say that, you're the combination of like the 5 people you spend the most time with. So, choose wisely.
Right. Yes, very true. So, all right. Well, thank you, Emily, for joining.
Yeah.
I want you to know that we're all proud of you here and you're
No,
doing
thank
great
you.
things. And it's so good to see you kind of living out your dreams and your passions in New York City. So thanks for catching up a little bit today. It was nice.
Of course. It was so fun. Glad we got to do this.